Blessed be chaotic cryptids. I'm B.
This is Red, and you're listening to Like You Know, Bruh.
And this is Cass. Welcome to our first episode.
That was beautiful.
So much smoother.
We did so good. We did
We
such a
sound
good intro.
professional.
That was totally our first try, by the way. We did not
So
try it multiple
professional?
times.
Mm-mm.
We're totally professional.
We got it the first time.
Yeah. Amateurs out here trying multiple times, and we're over here killing it the first time.
Nailing it.
Okay, so I guess we could go ahead and explain kind of what we're all about, what this show, podcast, I don't know what you want to call it because it's going to be on YouTube eventually, but the podcast is kind of going to be centered around a bunch of different things. I've had a bunch of people ask me about it, and it's kind of difficult to describe, which is why we gave it the name that we did. It covers an umbrella of different types of topics, but we're more or less focused on metaphysics, spirituality, anything supernatural, aliens, anything that is out of the norm of quote-unquote reality is what we would be discussing. Scary stories, all of the above. So the first episode today, we're going to be kind of going over just an introduction of our personal journey on where we've been before in the past, whether it be religious aspects, and then moving forward with how we are where we're at right now, going into where we want to learn more, things that fascinate us, maybe future discussions that we want to have. And of course, along the way, throughout this whole podcast, we always want to hear from our listeners. If they have any, once we get more listeners, we're going to have more. Right now, we only have a few probably, but, we want to hear from everybody because we want to be able to connect with people and tell their stories and learn as much as we can from different people's experiences. So
there's so many things that we can connect on over the span of all of these topics that maybe you don't get to chat about with your friends' daily life. And you can just send us an email, and we'd love to chat with you about it.
Yeah, and we'll have that email probably at the end of this episode. Not probably, we will have it. And then we'll have social medias out there that you can follow us on as well. But we'll get this first episode finished, and once we get it finished and edited and uploaded, we'll include the stuff at the end, but we won't upload this until those things are out. So, okay, who wants to go first? Is it me? You guys are looking like it's me.
Yeah,
I mean, this is your baby. Look, this is your baby. The stream is my baby. Sarah's thinking about her own podcast, baby. So your take, I think, yeah, hell yeah. But I think you should take the lead on this because this is something that you've wanted to do for so long. And I've toyed with the idea of it. And you and I had that one podcast that we were thinking about doing that I guess we got busy and it fell off or whatever happened with it. But yeah, this podcast is your baby. You are taking the reins, B. We are helping support you. We are helping build it with you.
Okay. All right.
This is the most you've said, Cassie.
Yeah. Good job.
Girl, that's how it's going. That's how I'm going to be. I'm going to just be like a silent but deadly fart in the wind.
Partake.
Look, no, I'm going to join in. Mm-hmm. But you two are the smart ones who are farther along on your spiritual.
Silent but deadly.
Wait, what?
Like a fart in the wind.
Not the descriptor I would have used.
But no, like
Um,
you two are the most knowledgeable about this subject. Like I dabble, I you know, piddle, if you will. But like you two are deeper in your spiritual journeys than I am. So like I'm gonna make little comments and I'm gonna join in the conversation, yes. But I am just following the lead here.
okay. All right. Well, so I do, before I jump in, I want to add that we're going to have a guest. We're going to have a guest, a fourth guest on our podcast, and we'll get into that later. You guys know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to say it right yet. I want to kind of give a disclaimer at the end before we introduce them. Kai. Cassie looked confused, so I was clarifying.
For a second, I was confused. I was
Okay.
like, wait
All
a
right,
minute.
so we'll introduce him later. Because some people are going to have opinions. Anyway, so I guess I'll go ahead and start with mine. I'm going to try and keep it shortish, but basically for me, I've kind of always felt drawn to witchy metaphysical stuff ever since like so freaking little, like elementary school type stuff. Like I remember sitting in PE, specifically one day, there was this one girl that was also in with the witchcrafty stuff. It was PE. I had finished walking because you were supposed to run the lap, but I walked it because I'm lazy as all get out. So we had finished and we could do whatever we wanted. So we sat in the grass, and I remember sitting with this girl, and she was like, "I can read your aura." And I'm like, "Okay, please." And so we sat there with hands on top of each other, and she's like sensing my aura. It was so cute, in my opinion, looking back. I'm sure with kids being kids, they were cruel and thought I was weird as all get out, but whatever. So
Fuck
I
them
think it
kids.
started with like, yeah. I think it started with watching Charmed, which I love that show so much. Charmed, all the creepy stuff that my Cass' grandma used to, I used to watch stuff like that with grandma all the time.
The
Fact or
Craft.
Fiction Beyond Belief, The Craft. Oh my God, The Craft.
Oh my God, The Craft. Yeah.
God, such a good movie. But yeah, so it's kind of like that's where all my love for and fascination with witchcraft and metaphysics came about. And then stuff happened in my childhood that, required me moving in with someone. I'm not gonna get into details, but like I moved in with someone, and they were very Christian leaning, very believed in God. And so in a way, to keep myself safe, it was kind of like I conformed to that. And so for the longest, from I'd say about age 11, maybe a little older, age 11 and till recently, I was very Christian. Very, very Christian. Or at least believe in God. For a few seconds, I was a Mormon. I got baptized. Irrelevant. But then, like I said, I was Christian for many years. Very conservative. Looking back on it, I'm like cringe, but here we are. We're progressed to where we're at. So when only recently, and when I say recently, the past 4 or so years, have I delved back into witchcraft and metaphysics. It started with me having, there were some life instances where it caused questions about the Christian God and the Bible and whatever. And there was a moment in the Bible that says me and my husband Jason were going through some stuff, and we had sat down and we were like, all right. So in the Bible it says to pray for, or God knows where you're at in your faith. And we were like this close, very, very close to like losing our faith already. And so in the Bible it says to test your faith, test God. And we were like, hey, my guy, if you're truly real, and you know where we're at in our faith, why don't you just show us that you're real by fixing this issue that we have? And nothing happened. The worst case scenario happened. And so that was kind of like the turning point. It flipped everything upside down for me. And for a little while I was kind of like, I don't want to say I was drowning, but I was like very, I was floundering because I wasn't sure like that was my faith for the longest, you know, and it was very scary going from having that to not really believing in anything or not knowing what I believed in. And even now, I still don't necessarily have a fully developed belief system, but that was kind of the start of my journey back into witchcraft. It felt very nice because for so long I think I was fighting it. Anytime I would, as a Christian, you know, it's all the devil, it's all bad and da 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 da. And so I was always fighting it. And in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, I love this stuff. But I had to like shut it down and make it seem like I was uncomfortable by it. But whenever, you know, everything happened and I lost that faith, I needed something to cling to, even if it was just the ritual of it. So I delved back into witchcraft and I started looking up like just ritualistic stuff, all the meanings behind everything. And I'm still learning. I still am not even anywhere near where Sarah's at, but it's not necessarily about being the best at it. It's always a learning journey. And so with all that being said, I have recently been diving into, because I had one instance, and we can get into it later, but I want everybody to have a chance to kind of talk about their stuff. But I had an instance where it just kind of, I don't know, punched me in the face about like near-death experiences, lucid dreaming, out-of-body experiences just kind of like popped up aggressively in my life all of a sudden. And then like alternate timelines, like all at once. And so that's kind of spurred on this interest in near-death experiences for me, and I've been trying to get into lucid dreaming. I've been having some freaky dreams lately that terrify me, but it's okay. I think it's part of the journey, and we'll get there, but that's kind of where I'm at. I'm interested in learning about more learning about lucid dreaming, alternate timelines, alternate universes, etc. And just kind of looking for maybe not proof, because there's no guarantee that there's any proof out there, or it's kind of difficult to find hardcore proof for stuff like that, but I don't know. It's just fascinating, and it's all any sort of spirituality or religious, which I'm not religious in any way. Any sort of spirituality requires a level of faith without proof, and that's kind of where I'm at. So, lucid dreaming, near-death experiences, out-of-body experience, etc. That's kind of where I'm at. But of course, we're also, again, on this podcast, going to dive into so many other types of topics. This is just to introduce you guys to us. And that I'm done. Just as a disclaimer, I'm adding this in here because you're going to hear us reference Red and Sarah. They're the same person. We just started this off initially wanting to keep anonymity with everything. We've kind of since decided to keep the anonymity but use first names, but no last names. So if you hear anybody mention Red or Sarah, they're both the same person. We're finding ourselves. Be patient with us, please.
And so my name is Red, and I was also brought up in a very conservative Christian household. And for most of my life, I really played the part. I got baptized. I went to youth group. I was in all the vacation Bible school. But when I look back at it, that was never for me. That never felt like home. That always felt like a way to try to get the people around me to um, accept and love me, because in my household, that was the only way. But I remember even now looking back at sleepovers with my friends when I was like 15, 16, where we're watching the craft, watching practical magic, doing little tarot readings, doing, just where you dip your toes in. You do light as a feather, stiff as a board.
Yep.
And that community of women and those experiences, that's what felt like home to me. That's what always spoke to me. So I've been practicing witchcraft. When I made that switch from about 18 on, I've been practicing on and off, collecting books, collecting knowledge. But it's really in these past 6 or 7 years that I really delved into it dedicated myself to it and learned what parts of witchcraft worked for me, where I was going to have my strengths, what parts didn't work for me. Because magic, witchcraft, it's so personal. There are going to be things you are very, very drawn to, and then there are things you don't care about. And I think one of the main differences between a lot of religions, spiritualities, however you want to put it, is in those you have to care about everything. There's one set standard, and you have to fall in line 100% all of the time, or there is a punishment or consequence. And everything is out of your hands. There's no personal power. You're always just kind of hoping someone else, your higher power, will step in and fix it. And hearing B talk about kind of that test of faith, it brings to mind I was 13 or 14 and very much into the Christianity and like in like Awana, if anyone else has been in that particular thing, like even homeschooled, I did not, the world was very small for me. And I remember during that time asking something in prayer, asking for one thing. And it didn't happen. Nothing happened, and I was heartbroken, and it was a very alone thing. And then in juxtaposition to that experience, this week I was having a very hard time, really, really struggling. And it just kind of like crying for days. And I went to my the sacred space I have set up. And I just kind of collapsed in front of it. And I called on everybody, ancestors, spirit guides, deities, whoever had a free line available that could maybe help me out. And I just cried until I couldn't. And then I went and I laid down. And this overwhelming feeling of peace and kind of being surrounded by even every witch that came before me, right? Just this very not alone, not doing this by myself, but powerful enough to handle it. And kind of looking at that and the feeling that brought me versus this other feeling when I was younger of just screaming into the abyss and just nothing.
Yeah.
Like no ease to my spirit, no anything. It's so different for me. And I feel like with witchcraft, I am constantly reminded of why I chose this path. I am constantly reminded that there's power around me, that there's power within me, that I can handle things. And I'm not just waiting. I'm not just hoping. I'm not just going to hear someone talk about something in church where I don't really necessarily get anything out of it. You just kind of sit there, and it's the difference of the devotion of time to make other people feel satisfied and comfortable, as opposed to witchcraft, which is also devotion to yourself.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I got here. I've been kind of expanding, and this is an interesting time to start a podcast for me, because I feel like my spiritual journey this year was really put on fast forward. The lessons are coming fast and without a whole like it's got hands right now. You know what I mean? So I'm very much having to lean into this and be caught and supported to support myself.
Yeah.
Well, so that's how I got here. That's what we're doing. We're still figuring it out because you get to figure it out uh, forever, but you can, and
Yeah.
that's the difference.
It's beautiful. I love that. I love that.
Oh, it's my turn. Um,
Hmm.
You're the only one left.
Yeah, there's nobody
I
else.
mean, Kay could go next. Kay. Um,
No,
no.
you can ask.
Um, so my journey is similar to B's in the aspect that, and even yours, like when I was younger, like I want to say 12, 13, we were going over a book in school pertaining to witchcraft, and I became obsessed with one of the characters because they had the same last name as me. And I was like, we're
Oh.
surely related. I'm descended from powerful witches and blah, 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 blah. And I was always searching for, in a way, community, but also connection.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Growing up basically as an only child 90% of the time with my father, who was a very older conservative man. He wasn't necessarily Christian. Like, he never drugged me to church. He didn't tell me to pray before bed. Like, but he was raised in fucking Bodunk, Florida, where you're super Christian conservative. And growing up gay and realizing that the one religion that I knew about didn't accept me was heartbreaking and difficult to come to terms with the fact that this thing that I am, that I can't control, that I tried to control. Like, I dated men to, well, boys, because I was young. But I dated boys to try to prove to myself that I could marry a man and have children to gain the approval of my father. That fell through, did not work, would not recommend. Um, at least if you're gay. B, yeah. Um, but yeah, so that's where I started getting in growing interest in that, because up until that point I didn't even know there was another choice besides Christianity. I thought it was Christianity or nothing.
Mm.
Because as a young person growing up in a Christian household, other religions aren't real.
Mm-hmm.
Witchcraft isn't real. Uh,
Or it's of the
Right.
devil.
or
Or
it's of
evil.
the
Yeah.
devil. Yeah, like not everything that's different is evil. And
Mm-hmm.
but as a child, you don't know this. So the fact that I was gay was evil. The fact that I was attracted to women or just not attracted to men was evil. Like, and I, throughout my teenage years, I would dip my toes in and then pull back out and go into Christianity and go to fucking Bible study and all of that stuff. Like the youth group I was part of, we did all kinds of activities, and part of that was me searching for community and connection. Because where I lived, it was very difficult to be anything other than a redneck Christian.
Mm-hmm.
My entire childhood,
Mhm.
I felt alienated from 90% of my school because they were all redneck Christian popular punks, and I wasn't. I was a weird little emo kid who, and just like with Sarah, it wasn't until, like, I want to say the past 5 to 6 years that I really started delving deeper. And even then, it wasn't until the past, I want to say 2 or 3, when I really delved in. Like, I was still dipping my toes up until 2 or 3 years ago. And then, I don't know, I just, with Sarah being on her journey, it kind of, I'm sorry,
I do
with
tend to drag
Red,
people along with me.
with Red being on her
Like, you're
journey,
coming.
it kind of not pushed me, but it was almost like it welcomed me to come in and explore what I had always been drawn to. Finding out that I was 3% Scandinavian made me really delve into the Norse mythology because
So much.
I had always been drawn to Norse mythology, Thor, Odin, even like outside of the God of War games and the all of that stuff.
Hmm.
Like I was obsessed with Xena because of the fact that it was connected to a pantheon of gods instead of a
Hmm.
monotheistic religion. Um, and I remember one night when I was laying in bed as a teenager, sober as fuck. Was not, I didn't smoke then. I didn't drink at all then. Like I didn't do anything. I was a boring ass little punk. And I
There's
remember
nothing
I
wrong with
was,
that. That's not boring.
nah.
That's just living your life however you feel you need to live it.
But I remember I was laying in bed and I had multiple thoughts this night because it was again a night when I couldn't sleep. Yay, ADHD. Um,
Mhm.
and I remember thinking about um how in Christianity the lifespan of a human is not even equal to the blink of an eye to God, right? And
Mhm.
so we only get that one blink of an eye to live our life the way that he wants us to live it. But if we don't, then we're going to hell for eternity. That's like saying, okay, my 6 month 8 month old child who's just now learning to walk, I'm going to place this vase on a pedestal in the middle of the room. Don't knock it over while you're practicing walking. And then they do. And then you put them in timeout for the rest of their life. It didn't sit right with me that we would get punished for being children because that's what we are to the Christian God, supposedly. We are ignorant monkeys, pretty much. And why would we get punished forever for something that happens like that? And it that didn't sit well with me, and that's where I really started distancing myself from Christianity, especially when it's something you can't even control, like
Mhm.
homosexuality. um,
Yep.
and I remember also, I want to say it was that same night, I was comparing to this is more scientific than metaphysical, but I
You
was
know some science.
comparing I was comparing the molecular structure of molecules. Like you've got
Mhm.
the atom and the nucleus and the protons and neutrons, electrons, blah, 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 blah. And I was comparing that to the universe, suns, solar systems, universe, galaxies, nebulas. Like there's so many different connections. And I was like, well, what if we are on the neutron or the
Mhm.
electron of some huge being's finger? Like,
Mhm.
and again, this is all my sober thoughts. So,
Mhm.
but, but yeah. And I mean, recently with the acceptance of myself and who I am and what I feel and what I think, and exploring the sides of me that I was never able to as a kid because it was looked down on or it was called evil or it was blah blah blah. Like I've grown close to a certain couple of deities that that really speak to me, and I've gotten more signs in the past year from those deities that have been specifically requested by me than I did in, we'll say, my 20 years of trying to be Christian. And it's just amazing how much more the deities that I believe in communicate with me than the Christian God who is supposed to have loved everyone but sends people to hell forever. has
Mm-hmm.
ever shown me. Like, no
Yeah.
communication from him, but sometimes it feels like constant communication from them and the universe. And I
Whatever.
just gotta
Yeah.
say, there's something to living your life the way that feels right.
Unapologetic.
It's interesting to me that you mentioned that because one of the things that all three of our stories have in common is a sense of self abandonment
Yes.
to fit in and be nurtured and feel
I
safe.
just got chills.
Yes, like we were like, okay, so we can't be ourselves and be here, and we have to be here. And it's when those things fell away that we were able to say, look, this is for us, not for anybody else, but this is for us. That's when things started aligning. That's when we started um, being able to connect. This is the community for the people who always felt like
Mm.
outsiders.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I cannot agree more.
And
Um,
I know I speak for all of us when I say we all felt like outsiders as children. Like,
oh, absolutely.
I never, even within my friend group, I felt like an outsider most of the time. Like, mostly because most of my friends were straight, and growing up where I did, there wasn't a lot of gay community. Like,
Hmm.
I can name on one hand the amount of gay people in my hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's not just because I can only name people on two hands that actually lived in that town because it was tiny.
I was about
But
to say there were 7 people there. You're like,
well, there's
I
six
think for
now because
me,
I ain't there no more.
I think for me with mine, it wasn't necessarily, it's kind of difficult to put into words or describe. I never really felt like an outcast per se. I just always felt invisible. Um,
mm,
like, and not in like I don't want to say it was in a cruel way because I don't think that anybody ever feels invisible in a cruel way. Like people are actively like ignoring you,
Yeah,
but it was just like I was always in the background.
less
And
important
the
than
only
those around you.
exactly, and the only time that I was ever acknowledged was in the classrooms because everybody always assumes that the quiet person is the smart person. So anytime I was acknowledged, it was like, oh, I want to be in her group because she's quiet, so she must be smart. And I'm not saying I was stupid, but like I wasn't like this straight A student or honor
Yeah,
roll type person, but like it was more or less I was invisible. And yeah, so I didn't, and even when I got up into high school, I think eventually I did. Even whenever I was hanging out with the outcasts, because that's who I would hang out with, I still didn't feel like I was seen. So, an example, like I was picked on in elementary school, but then after that, it like again invisible and disappeared. And maybe I did that to myself so that I wouldn't get picked on. Maybe that was a coping mechanism, but an example of that is when I was in high school and I hung out with the outcasts, I still didn't really get picked on. Nobody picked on me. I always noticed it to them around the people that I hung out with. So there was this one incident which was disgusting. Um, there was this, we were in art class and there was this girl that I really like. She was very sweet, very kind. And the popular kids were in the art class and they came over and she had her headphones in because our art teacher was really cool and let us listen to music. She had her earbuds in and she didn't hear what they said, but they came over and they said something. I heard what they said, but they said something to her. She didn't hear them and she kind of laughed it off because they were laughing and they walked away. What they did is they came over and they had a pair of scissors in their hand and they're like the right way, and they laughed it off and walked off. And again, she didn't hear. And I think I spoke up, but I can't remember what I said because it was way while back. Um, but that's like, I never got picked on because I was invisible. So it wasn't necessarily me feeling like the outcast, but I always hung out with the outcast. Um, and
that's the thing too, though. Going back to talking about self-abandonment or safety, there's a safety too in disappearing into the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I think we all kind of went on this journey of both wanting to be seen and also being afraid of being scrutinized. Because when someone looks too closely, there's always a part of you that goes, oh, they're going to find what does not align with them. They're going to find something, and then I won't have any community at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really hard balance to find, especially when you're a kid, when everything around you, like school, that's most of your life. Then you go home to your parents, to whomever. And if you don't quite fit in anywhere, or you're not quite seen anywhere, you're just trying to hit the marker to have your basic needs met.
Mm-hmm. Yep. That's it. That's absolutely it. And whenever you get it, like, I think the other part is, speaking on my own personal experience, is when you're at home and no matter what you do, if you speak up emotional or if you do something, whatever, and you're kind of called out, and this kind of not from my childhood, but whenever I was living with the people I lived with for those few years. I'm not going to name names, but when I was living with them, it was like anything out of the norm, it was bad. So you have to, not only do you get it from home, so you learn how to make yourself smaller and more invisible so that you're safe at home, but it translates over into school too, for me. Like I think that was, how that took place.
No, absolutely. It's so interesting to think about how important validation is when you're a child, like validation of your emotions, validation of your curiosity. Because whenever I was a kid, if I showed any emotion, if I showed any hurt, it was always written off as being dramatic or overreacting. So you're right, you shrink and you shrink and you shrink, trying to kind of get in under that bar where it's not quote unquote too dramatic to be heard, because all you want to do is be heard. All you want to hear is your feelings matter, your interests matter.
Mm-hmm.
But it teaches you that they don't. So you don't share your emotions or your interests with anyone ever.
Yep. That's it. That's it
Speaking
too.
on that, I have a story about that. Pretty much exact same thing. So when I first came to the realization that I was not straight, I hadn't come to the realization that I was fully gay, but I was definitely not straight. Like, I had crushes on girls. I didn't look at boys like I did girls. I was different. And that's really, I think, when my need to escape really set in. So I, it was dumb, but I took like a buttload of a leave and I mentioned it to someone because they said something and I was young and dumb and I think I was more looking for attention than actually trying to kill myself. I wanted that, well, what's going on? Talk to
Yeah.
me.
You wanted someone to see you.
I wanted to be seen, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And so she told the school called my dad came and picked me up, took me home. I remember I had just gotten settled in bed, and my dad came and sat on the corner of the bed next to me and was like, well, what's going on? And I was like, nothing, Dad. I don't feel good, blah, blah, blah. And he left. And that was the whole conversation. There was none of this, well, what made you feel like you had to take way additional medication? Like there was none of this. I mean, with my dad, mental health wasn't it didn't exist. There
Yeah,
was no depression, there was no anxiety, there was no autism, there was no ADHD. There was just an unruly child who, first of all, you made me unruly because you spoiled the shit out of me. But also, there was this child who grew up with no feminine love, like no motherly love. Like the closest I got to motherly love was when dad had girlfriends. And he only had two that I remember, and one was around for fucking ever, and I loved that lady. But
I
even
remember her.
she but even she wasn't around enough to be a mother. So I grew up with an emotionally unavailable conservative man as an emotionally unavailable 13-year-old gay person. Like, I was alone. I had, or at least I felt like I had no family. At that point, I had no friends besides one who would later try to get me beaten up. All of my friends that I've ever claimed to be best friends have let me down besides Red. Like, people are disappointing, and having to learn that as a child who still doesn't even know who they are, it's
Mm-hmm.
hard,
Yeah.
and it's lonely.
Oh, yeah.
But finding the spirituality that I have found, even when I can't even say that because I don't feel lonely anymore. Even when I'm alone, like because of Red, I've always got someone with me. Even if I'm miles away, there's always someone with me. And
Yeah.
I feel more than just that one someone because of the spirituality that I found. Like
Yeah.
I can look up and see a crow flying across the sky and I'm like, "Hey, nice to see you."
Hey, friend, how's it going?
I
Um,
think it's so interesting that you mentioned toxic friendships because that just this week I've been thinking about um, how we repeat the same unhealthy cycles from our childhood.
mhm.
Um, for example, like growing up with parents that would often invalidate feelings or just label them as dramatic. So, because that way you don't have to look at your own behavior, right? If the
Mhm.
other person is just dramatic and crazy, you don't ever have to have any self evaluation. And I kind of noticed that I would still be drawn to people that did not value me or like have care and gentleness around my emotions.
Be able
Okay,
to.
so we lost recording for a second. I'm so sorry. We're recording again, so I should be able to mix it all together. So go ahead. I'm sorry, Sarah.
No, that's okay. But we do. So we are drawn to the same people that disappointed us in different phases as we get older. Like we're still to this day trying to prove to those same people that we are worth loving and we are worth listening to and we're worth valuing. And it's really interesting to me that it's like, oh, this hurt me so bad as a child. Let me hang out around people that have those same qualities, and maybe it's different this time.
Yeah. Yep.
It's so hard to get out of those cycles
Absolutely.
until you see them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you start putting yourself first and pushing yourself, challenging yourself to set up boundaries and stick with those boundaries. And those are not easy things to
Yeah.
do, but when you do them, they work and they work wonders. I just
And that's the thing too.
go ahead. You're good. Go ahead.
Oh no, just that we it is hard because you develop this emotional attachment to people that are not meeting your needs. And then even though it's not necessarily a loss when they leave your lives, because that is you breaking the cycle, it's still very hard. It's heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It
Even
is.
if
And
you're
it's,
not, go ahead.
no, you're good. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, even if you're not necessarily missing the person, it's still a relationship. It, it's still a relationship that's being ended. It's a connection that's being cut off. It's still going to hurt even if you have lost all love and respect and care for the person who you have to do that with. Like
Mm-hmm.
and you understand that, and you can be like, there's no point in asking, why am I sad? I don't like this person anymore, because they have shown me they're not who I thought they were, or they showed me that they were exactly who I thought they were, or whatever the case may be. Like, you've got to remember, I'm not sad about losing them. I'm sad about the connection that I had with them. I'm sad
Mm-hmm.
about the relationship. I don't miss them. I miss what we had. Even if it was fake, it was still a connection. Or not
Yeah.
necessarily fake, but even if it
You
wasn't,
miss what it represents.
Yeah.
yeah, even if it wasn't healthy, it was still a connection that you had.
Mm-hmm.
And you can
Yeah.
see that it's unhealthy. You can see why it's not beneficial to your life, but sometimes you still got to let that connection go and then feel that sadness of losing that connection.
You have to grieve it. You do have to
Yeah,
allow yourself time to grieve that for sure. For sure.
exactly.
Yeah. Um, so all of that, to bring it back to spirituality, um, I did want to, because I kept, this thing keeps, in my head, it keeps reminding me, when I got back into witchcraft, as an adult, the one thing that, kept sticking out to me, or I don't want to say it kept sticking, but it was something that's common around people who delve into witchcraft, or who awaken their, um, magical powers, whatever you want to call it. I'm using
Spirituality.
quotes because, yeah, it's brought on it's either natural, but it could also be brought on by trauma, childhood trauma, a big, very traumatic event. Usually, that's kind of how it comes about. So, having the childhood that we all had, it kind of tracks, honestly, that we went down the route that we went down. It makes sense that we are where we're at right now because of the traumatic stuff that we went through. And I think that spirituality helps. There's something about witchcraft that is very, and I think we've touched on it already, but it's just something where there's scientific proof in it. There's a lot of psychological aspect of it, even in,
Mhm.
like the ritualistic aspect of it it has a very psychological, not psych, that type of base.
Psychosomatic.
So, yeah, well,
No?
that's not really,
Oh.
no, it's more or less, so when you go to therapy and they're like, hey, try meditating, take deep breaths,
Mhm.
do this, do that. These are all part of ritualistic things, which is what witchcraft is. It's a form of therapy. And so when people call it demonic or whatever, it's like, okay, but when you're sitting here and you're praying to a god, or you're Catholic and you're doing all of the ritualistic stuff that Catholics do, that's witchcraft. You are doing witchcraft, which is ultimately therapy. It is therapy in a very pure sense. And I don't know. I just kind of wanted to bring it back to that because that's kind of where we started here. I mean, we're all kind of trying to figure stuff out, and we're trying to, better ourselves. And I believe it. I'm working on practicing it, but constantly being better than you were yesterday, giving yourself grace. But like, you're never gonna be perfect. You're never gonna be great. And I don't mean that in a bad way. Obviously, for self confidence, I'm great. I'm a wonderful human being. I'm the best ever. But like for humbling purposes, it's like I want to always be bettering myself. Just because I have this belief doesn't mean that I can't always be working towards being better in every aspect of my life. So struggling with it, but we're getting there. So yeah, I think I have to go to the bathroom so bad. So I think I want to wrap it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But that being said, is there anything else anybody wants to add? And is there anything anybody wants to talk about next week, in particular?
No. I actually think we should splice next week and this week together because
Mental
Mimi
health.
brought up a great point. Yeah, because it's healing, it's self-empowerment, it's there's a reason that people don't really want you to go down that path, because if you believe you can empower yourself, then you're less likely to conform
Mm-hmm.
to get that protection from other people.
Yes.
And I'd love to touch on that next week.
Okay. Yeah, we can do that. Okay.
Okay.
So we can do that. So I guess we'll add another topic to our podcast, and that's mental health. So spirituality, mental health, and stuff like that.
Well, it plays such a huge part in it.
Yeah, it does. It does. Oh, okay. So then we needed to go ahead and address the I might leave some of this in just because we're still new. We're figuring it out. So please be patient with us, guys. So where can people like find us on social media, and then where can they email us?
So we've got an email address that's bruh podcast@gmail.com. And all of our socials have the same name. So you can send an email there. You can follow us on Instagram, TikTok. I haven't set up a Facebook yet. I don't know if we want to do that.
No, I don't
know.
But Facebook might, if we get enough requests, we might do a Facebook.
Yeah. But just follow us there for updates. Send us anything that you want to talk about to the email address. We want to hear from you guys. We want to learn about everyone's experiences, because that's how we connect.
Yeah. And whether you want to, you can write in about virtually anything. I mean, your mental health.
You can share your experiences.
Spiritual journey. You can give us a spooky story of something that happened to you.
You can ask questions that we would love to explore and research together and share with you.
Yes, definitely want to do that. So, okay. So all that being said, this first episode was about our spiritual journey, where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going. And it gives a little insight as to who we are and kind of what we believe in terms of mental and what we're all about. Yes, absolutely. So we'll discuss the what Red mentioned in, talking about self-validation versus needing a higher power validation as a means of control. I think that's what we'll discuss next week. And we'll probably dabble in some stuff. But yeah, send in your stuff. Be here from the future. Again, the audio was kind of glitchy here, so I just wanted to kind of make sure that you guys were aware of what the email is and how it's spelled in case it's misheard or missed. The email is podcast@gmail.com, spelled LIKEYAKNOW, podcast, PODCAST @gmail.com. Yeah. All right. So send in stuff if you got stuff. We will read it. If you don't, if you're a stranger and you're listening to this, because we're going to have a lot of close people that we know, sending stuff in maybe, or just asking. I don't know. If we have anybody close to us sending stuff in and you don't want us to use your name, let us know. If you are a stranger, which hopefully strangers listen to this ASAP because it would be great, and you don't want us to know your name or any certain information, so we don't say it. If you don't tell us explicitly not to, we will not. I don't want to, we just want to keep stuff private. Don't want to expose anybody for, or call anybody out on anything. So anyway, all that being said, this was our first episode. Please be patient with us. We're still learning. If you have any tips or anything, please feel free to let us know if you didn't like something. Leo Skeppy always says in his podcast to download this instead of, obviously give it 5 stars, but also download, so that it's very good if you downloaded it. So if you listen, please download this.
Yeah, just tuck us away. Tuck us away in your pocket in a playlist.
Yeah, just save it for later, or listen to it on repeat. That's fine with us. Okay, and then I guess it's time. This is our first time using our outro and intro, so whatever. So remember, do you guys remember what our outro is?
No.
If it gets weird,
You're
if
muted.
shit gets weird,
Yeah.
if shit gets weird,
Awkward
lean
silence.
into it.
There we go.
Yes.
All right. So then I'll see you guys next Sunday, and we will talk to all you guys who's listening in next Sunday. But you guys won't. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll talk to you guys later.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.
Love you.